Can a movie really break your heart? In the 1970s, romantic tragedies did more than just entertain. They shattered emotional walls with unforgettable love stories that ended in sorrow. These films made audiences cry, reflect, and sometimes never fully recover. Stick around as we revisit 15 devastating romances that still haunt the silver screen. Love Story. Released in 1970, Love Story became the blueprint for romantic tragedies that defined the decade. Based on Eric Siegel's best-selling novel, the film follows Oliver Barrett IV, a wealthy Harvard student, and Jenny Cavallari, a working-class music student. Their romance blooms quickly, sweetly, and devastatingly, until Jenny is diagnosed with a terminal illness. What makes Love Story unforgettable isn't just its haunting final act, but how tenderly it explores love that burns bright and brief. The chemistry between Ryan O'Neal and Ally McGraw felt so authentic, it left audiences sobbing in theaters. Jenny's final words, "Love means never having to say you're sorry," echoed across generations, becoming both a romantic ideal and a haunting reminder of love's fragility. The film didn't just devastate viewers, it changed Hollywood's approach to storytelling. No longer was romance just about the happy ending. It was about the journey, the loss, and the price of love. Love Story wasn't afraid to let its audience grieve. It held a mirror to real life, where not all love stories end with a kiss in the rain, but sometimes in sterile hospital rooms with whispered goodbyes. It became a cultural event and a global phenomenon, grossing over $100 million and securing 7 Oscar nominations. And still, after all these years, it remains one of the most tragically beautiful love stories ever told. The Way We Were. Barbra Streisand and Robert Redford's The Way We Were tore through the screen in 1973 with a love so complicated, so intense, it felt almost too real to be fiction. Katie is a fiercely political, outspoken woman. Hubble is a laid-back, all-American golden boy. Their love is magnetic, opposites drawn together by sheer emotional gravity. Yet that very difference becomes the wedge that drives them apart. The film plays like a bittersweet memory, warm, painful, tender. Told over years, wars, and emotional evolution, it captures how two people can love each other deeply but still be fundamentally incompatible. And that's the heartbreak. Their love isn't flawed, it's just wrong in time and temperament. Streisand's vulnerability, combined with Redford's quiet sorrow, elevates every frame. The title track, with its melancholic lyrics, "Memories light the corners of my mind," cemented the movie's place in pop culture and in countless broken hearts. What made The Way We Were so wrenching wasn't just the breakup. It was the acknowledgement that some people aren't meant to be together, no matter how deep the love. That kind of emotional truth hit audiences hard in the 70s, a decade already questioning fairy tale endings. The final scene, when Katie brushes Hubble's hair aside with a simple, "Your girl is lovely, Hubble," is cinematic heartbreak distilled into a single gesture. A Star is Born. In the 1976 remake of A Star is Born, Barbra Streisand returned, but this time to tell a love story about fame, addiction, and inevitable loss. She plays Esther Hoffman, a talented singer on the cusp of greatness. Chris Christopherson is John Norman Howard, a rock star spiraling into self-destruction. Their love is passionate, but doomed. As Esther's star rises, John's falls, and he can't escape the shadow of his own insecurities and alcoholism. The tragedy is layered. It's about what we do to the people we love when we can't save ourselves. The chemistry between Streisand and Christopherson is electric, raw, and tragic in the most intimate ways. Watching Esther support John, even as he self-destructs, is both infuriating and heartbreaking. But perhaps what stung the most for audiences was the inevitability. They could see the crash coming, and they were powerless to stop it. John's ultimate sacrifice, believing it was the only way to set her free, left audiences in shock. Streisand's performance of Evergreen became a soft anthem for eternal love, marred by sorrow. The film broke hearts not just through its ending, but through its entire arc, watching a beautiful love unravel under the weight of success and self-destruction. In the 70s, when culture was beginning to deconstruct heroism and fame, A Star is Born showed just how much pain could exist behind the spotlight. The Great Gatsby. The Great Gatsby isn't just a period drama, it's a poetic elegy of unfulfilled love. Starring Robert Redford as the mysterious Jay Gatsby and Mia Farrow as the elusive Daisy Buchanan, the film adapts F. Scott Fitzgerald's haunting novel with lush visuals and quiet desperation. Gatsby, a self-made millionaire, throws lavish parties not for pleasure, but in hopes Daisy will one day walk through his door. Their eventual reunion seems like destiny, but the romance was always built on illusion. Gatsby's obsession with recreating the past blinds him to the cold truths of class, loyalty, and human frailty. The heartbreak of The Great Gatsby lies not in a sudden tragedy, but in the slow realization that love, when built on fantasy, cannot survive reality. Redford gives Gatsby a tragic nobility, a man undone by his own dream. When Gatsby is murdered, alone in his pool, waiting for a call that never comes, it's not just the death of a man, it's the death of hope. The film's pastel aesthetic and decadent atmosphere mask a profound emptiness, reflecting a nation disillusioned with its own ideals in the 1970s. Viewers didn't just cry for Gatsby, they cried because, in his pursuit of love, they saw the cost of living in a dream. Days of Heaven. Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven is less a movie and more a melancholic poem brought to life. Released in 1978, it tells the story of Bill, his lover Abby, and a wealthy yet lonely farmer caught in a tragic love triangle during the early 20th century. Bill convinces Abby to marry the dying farmer for his fortune, but things unravel when love blossoms where manipulation once ruled. Malick's signature style, sun-drenched wheat fields, whispered narration, and haunting silences, amplifies the emotional impact. The story isn't loud in its heartbreak, but deeply human in its depiction of love, betrayal, and remorse. Abby's quiet transformation from accomplice to genuine lover speaks volumes without words. What makes Days of Heaven unforgettable is how it captures the impermanence of beauty, romantic or otherwise. Every moment feels fleeting, every shot tinged with sadness, as if the characters are already haunted by the tragedy they're living through. The cinematography won an Oscar, and deservedly so. It turns the film into a visual elegy. When violence finally erupts, it's as inevitable as the setting sun. Viewers left theaters feeling hollow and hypnotized, unable to shake the imagery or the sorrow. It's a romantic tragedy wrapped in the silence of missed chances and unforgiving fate. The Other Side of Midnight. Based on Sidney Sheldon's best-selling novel, The Other Side of Midnight is a sweeping romantic epic that twists into something much darker. It begins as a passionate love affair between Noelle Page, a beautiful French woman with dreams of stardom, and Larry Douglas, an ambitious American pilot. But when Larry abandons Noelle for an American heiress, her heartbreak curdles into obsession. What follows is a spiraling descent into revenge, manipulation, and ultimately, destruction. Marie-France Pizier's portrayal of Noelle is mesmerizing. She embodies a woman betrayed so deeply that love becomes indistinguishable from hate. The film lures the viewer into thinking it's a glamorous melodrama, but what unravels is a tragedy of Shakespearean scale. Noelle's rise to power and Larry's moral decay build toward a chilling climax that feels as cruel as it is inevitable. The emotional weight isn't just in the pain of lost love, it's in how love, when betrayed, becomes a weapon. Audiences in the 70s weren't prepared for such an unforgiving twist. The Other Side of Midnight is a romantic tragedy that breaks your heart, then crushes it beneath layers of manipulation and poetic justice. It reminds us that some love stories don't end in tears. They end in cold, calculated silence. Nicholas and Alexandra. Nicholas and Alexandra is a romance sewn into the fabric of a historical catastrophe. Based on the true story of the last Tsar of Russia and his beloved wife, the film chronicles not only the decline of an empire, but also a heartbreaking portrait of love surviving in a collapsing world. Nicholas II and Alexandra, played by Michael Jaston and Janet Suzman, are depicted not as rulers, but as two fragile souls caught in a storm of revolution, politics, and public rage. Their deep affection for each other, tender, devoted, and all-consuming, clashes with their inability to see the suffering outside their palace walls. Alexandra's obsession with healing their hemophiliac son through mysticism, including her reliance on Rasputin, becomes the emotional hinge of the story. As their reign spirals into chaos, their love remains one of the only constants. But that constancy becomes tragic when the Romanov family is imprisoned and ultimately executed. Watching the family cling to each other in their final days, sharing prayers, silent glances, and bittersweet smiles, felt like a gut punch to 1970s audiences who had never seen royalty stripped so bare. It's not just a political downfall. It's the romantic undoing of two people whose love couldn't save them from a world that no longer needed kings and queens. In that quiet, doomed intimacy, Nicholas and Alexandra shattered hearts. The Go-Between. Joseph Losey's The Go-Between is a slow-burning masterpiece of repressed love and ruined innocence. Set in Edwardian England, the story is told through the eyes of young Leo, a boy spending the summer at a wealthy estate. There, he becomes the unwitting messenger between Marion, a refined young woman of high social standing, and Ted, a rugged local farmer. Their forbidden romance is tender, desperate, and hidden, communicated only through secret notes delivered by Leo. But as the affair deepens, so does the emotional burden placed on the boy. The tragedy isn't explosive, it's suffocating. The oppressive weight of class, duty, and social appearance slowly crushes the romance until it's buried in betrayal and heartbreak. When Leo finally realizes the truth behind the letters he's been delivering, his innocence shatters. The story cuts even deeper as we flash forward to Leo as an adult, forever scarred by the role he played in a love he could never understand. What made The Go-Between unforgettable for 1970s audiences was how it explored tragedy not through death, but through time. How moments of youthful innocence can be permanently stained by the cruel reality of adult heartbreak. The film's final lines. The past is a foreign country. They do things differently there. Remind us that sometimes the deepest romantic wounds are the ones carried in silence for a lifetime. Ryan's Daughter. David Lean's Ryan's Daughter is a sweeping Irish romance told with epic grandeur and intimate sorrow. Set during World War I in a small coastal village, it centers on Rosie Ryan, a young woman trapped in a dull marriage to a school teacher. Hungry for passion, Rosie begins a torrid affair with Major Dorian, a British officer emotionally broken by the war. Their love, while intense, is doomed from the start, not just because of the circumstances, but because of the unforgiving judgment of the village around them. When their secret is discovered, Rosie becomes the target of brutal social ostracism. In one of the film's most heart-wrenching sequences, she is publicly humiliated by her neighbors, physically and emotionally assaulted in a storm of moral fury. Yet what makes Ryan's Daughter so tragic isn't just Rosie's downfall. It's how her dreams, her romantic idealism, are crushed by a society that refuses to forgive. The lush cinematography and Maurice Jarre's haunting score only amplify the emotional devastation. David Lean's decision to tell a deeply personal tragedy within a politically explosive context gives the film an emotional power that left many audiences in tears. In the end, Rosie doesn't die, but she's exiled emotionally, a walking ghost in her own homeland. Her tragedy is not in losing love, but in discovering its cost. The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. Based on Yukio Mishima's haunting novel, The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea is a romantic tragedy cloaked in silence, repression, and eerie fatalism. Starring Chris Christopherson as a rugged, introspective sailor and Sarah Miles as a lonely widow, the film tells the story of their ill-fated love affair through the eyes of her disturbed teenage son. At first, the romance feels redemptive. Two lost souls finding solace in each other's arms, drawn together by mutual yearning and emotional wounds. But as the sailor contemplates leaving his seafaring life to become a father figure, the boy, who views him as a traitor to masculine ideals, descends into a dark and violent plot. What begins as a tender love story unravels into a horror-tinged tragedy. The impact is devastating, not because of grand declarations, but because of the chilling quietness with which innocence is corrupted and love is destroyed. The film captures the 1970s disillusionment with traditional roles of manhood and romantic fantasy. It asks the unsettling question, can love survive in a world that idolizes control and strength over vulnerability? For many viewers, it was a slow-burn heartbreak that lingered long after the credits, evoking a sense of dread over how innocence, when poisoned, can destroy even the most sincere connections. Lenny. At its core, Lenny is not just the biopic of controversial comedian Lenny Bruce, but a tragic dissection of a love affair choked by addiction, fame, and emotional implosion. Directed by Bob Fosse and starring Dustin Hoffman in a tour de force performance, the film follows Lenny's meteoric rise in the comedy world and his stormy relationship with Honey Harlow, a stripper-turned-wife played hauntingly by Valerie Perrine. Their romance is raw and magnetic, a whirlwind of passion that quickly turns volatile. As Lenny's obsession with speaking truth to power grows, so does his dependency on drugs and self-sabotage. Honey, once his muse, becomes collateral damage in his unraveling. The emotional decay of their bond is laid bare in black and white flashbacks, intensifying the sense of impending doom. What makes Lenny so tragic isn't just Bruce's fall. It's how love, even when profound, isn't enough to rescue someone bent on self-destruction. Viewers in the 70s were stunned by the film's honesty and stark portrayal of how brilliance and addiction often walk hand in hand. The final scenes of a broken man alone on stage and a woman left behind in the debris of fame left audiences hollow. Lenny showed that sometimes the most painful romantic tragedies are not about death, but slow, irreversible erosion. Harold and Maude. Few films are as beautifully unconventional and heartbreakingly sweet as Harold and Maude. Directed by Hal Ashby, this cult classic explores the unlikely romance between Harold, a morbid 20-year-old obsessed with death, and Maude, a vivacious 79-year-old who embraces life with childlike wonder. Their love is shocking at first, almost absurd, but as the story unfolds, it becomes tender, poetic, and deeply human. Maude teaches Harold to find joy in the small, overlooked wonders of life, pulling him out of his self-imposed emotional grave. Yet, just when Harold seems reborn, Maude reveals her decision to end her life on her 80th birthday, believing she has lived fully. The heartbreak crashes in like a tidal wave. The emotional punch of Harold and Maude lies in its blend of dark comedy and existential romance. It challenges age, norms, and expectations with every scene, making audiences question what love truly means. The final moments, Harold alone, transformed but broken, remind us that the greatest love stories often end with the deepest pain. In the 1970s, a decade questioning every societal boundary, this film felt like an emotional revolution. It didn't just break hearts, it redefined them. The Story of Adele H. The Story of Adele H is a harrowing portrayal of unreciprocated love spiraling into madness. Directed by François Truffaut, the film is based on the real-life journals of Adele Hugo, daughter of famed novelist Victor Hugo. Adele falls obsessively in love with a British officer, Lieutenant Pinson, and follows him from place to place, refusing to accept that he does not love her back. Her descent into delusion is slow, painful, and incredibly intimate. What makes Adele H so tragic is its commitment to emotional realism. The audience is forced to witness every stage of her unraveling, from hope to desperation to mental collapse. There are no dramatic confrontations, only quiet heartbreaks that accumulate like falling snow. Ajani's portrayal is haunting. She embodies a woman consumed by love so completely it devours her identity. For 1970s viewers, it was a painful mirror to the era's growing interest in female subjectivity and mental health. Adele isn't just a tragic lover, she's a woman erased by the weight of her feelings in a world that offers no support. By the film's end, her isolation is so absolute that even viewers felt stranded. It's not a tearjerker, it's a slow, soul-crushing fall into the abyss of romantic obsession. The Last Picture Show. Peter Bogdanovich's The Last Picture Show is a mournful coming-of-age tale wrapped in small-town isolation and emotional loss. Set in a fading Texas town in the early 1950s, the story centers on high school seniors Sonny and Dwayne and their romantic entanglements with the beautiful but emotionally fragile JC. Beneath the backdrop of dusty streets and a dying movie theater lies a series of heartbreaks, love that can't be returned, mistakes that can't be undone, and futures that look dimmer with every passing scene. The film is filled with quiet devastation. Relationships begin and collapse with little fanfare but lasting emotional damage. JC, desperate for validation, jumps from one boy to another, while Sonny falls into an affair with a much older, lonely housewife. The beauty of The Last Picture Show lies in its restraint. It doesn't scream its tragedy, it lets it bleed slowly across the screen. When the town's only movie theater closes, it feels like a symbolic death of innocence, love, and hope. The 1970s audience, already disillusioned with the American dream, found in this film a mirror to their own melancholy. It's a romantic tragedy, not because of a dramatic death, but because it captures how love quietly fades. The Tamarind Seed. The Tamarind Seed, directed by Blake Edwards, is a quiet but emotionally gripping romantic thriller that ends in a subdued tragedy. Julie Andrews stars as Judith, a recently heartbroken British civil servant who meets Fyodor, a Soviet military attaché, while vacationing in Barbados. Their romance blossoms under the warmth of Caribbean sunsets, but it's quickly shadowed by Cold War tensions and the looming question of espionage. Fyodor may be a defector, or he may be using Judith, or worse, both. What starts as a soulful connection becomes a tangle of doubt, fear, and looming sacrifice. As the story progresses, Judith must decide whether to trust her heart or protect herself and her country. The suspense never overshadows the emotion. It deepens it. Their love grows under impossible circumstances, making every glance, every touch feel stolen and precious. The emotional gut punch comes when their romance is interrupted by the harsh realities of politics. The ending, ambiguous yet deeply sorrowful, leaves viewers hanging in emotional limbo. Was the love real? Was it ever safe? The Tamarind Seed left audiences in the 70s in silent reflection, capturing the tragedy of two people who found love in a world too dangerous to hold it. These 15 films didn't just tell love stories, they etched emotional scars into cinema history. Each one shattered illusions, redefined romance, and reminded us that the deepest love often ends in the deepest pain. If these tragic tales moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your favorite heartbreaker in the comments.